The first week of August is going to be the biggest week in FNAF history, with 2 full games coming out, 2 official FNAF game demos, a Steel Wool announcement, a mystery collab announcement, a new interview with Scott Cawthon, and a completely free full release book. What about that free book though? On August 3rd, we're getting the VIP interactive novel ebook for free, and for a while that's all the information we had about it. But we just got a description from a book-selling website about it, and now we can speculate. So let's do just that. Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves some predictions. And it is currently 98 degrees, the feels like is 105 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I'm already sweating, I'm going to get sweaty, I'm under studio lights, indoors, but the outdoors is 100 degrees. Deal with it. So what are interactive novels? What do we know so far about these books? From what we can see, they are choose-your-own-adventure styled books, but they're called interactive novels because a company trademarked the term choose-your-own-adventure to sell more books, which feels like bullshit because that's basically a genre. Like, I can't copyright the term fantasy thriller. Why can they? Throughout this year, there have been 3 different FNAF interactive novels teased to the public, all of them slated to release this year as well, with the closest being VIP on August 3rd, the one I've already mentioned. We know that VIP will be a free ebook and will be a little over half the length of the other books, coming in at about 160 pages. And honestly, this seems like a really smart move business-wise. After all, nobody really knows how these books are going to work. I mean, they have 2 difficulty settings. How does that even function in a choose-your-own-adventure book? So giving everybody a free taste of what that's going to be before the books get released makes a lot of sense. It'll tell the public, hey, this is what we're planning to release. Not to mention, throwing out a free book to the community is a really nice gesture. One of the biggest criticisms of lore being in FNAF books, and one of the most valid criticisms, is that it's expensive. I mean, these games, most of them anyway, are like $5. So you're telling me I have to buy multiple $10 to $15 books to understand them? Many people can't afford that or just don't have access to those kinds of books. So putting out a free ebook on the internet during this anniversary, which hopefully has some good lore in it, is a perfect gesture. We also know, and I'll get into later how we know, that this book is set in a mega pizzaplex, likely the security breach one. The website listing also mentions it's number 0 in the series, so presumably it's the teaser before the main series. But the next book coming out after, number 1 in the series, is the week before, set to release in September 3rd, exactly 1 month later. This book, along with the next one in the series, are confirmed to be much longer. Amazon lists it as 256 pages. We also know the week before is going to be set before the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game. And finally, we have Return to the Pit, coming out December 24th around the end of the year. It's worth noting that technically all 3 of these books are set really closely to a game in the franchise, VIP being around Security Breach, the week before being around FNAF 1, and Return to the Pit being around Into the Pit. But obviously, this book is also an adaptation of the original story Into the Pit from Fazbear Frights. Alright, so that's all of the technical information out of the way. We've since gotten summaries of each of these books, and using that and the context of the books themselves, we can start to actually speculate what they might contain. So we'll start with the book that has admittedly the least to speculate about, the first official book in the series, The Week Before. This was the first announced interactive novel way earlier in the year, and with it came an Amazon listing, which then gave us the summary. Quote, return to where it all began in this interactive novel set before the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game. You, the reader, are the security guard, and you've got 5 nights, or is it 6, to survive Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy as they try to wipe you out. And it's very worthwhile to mention that since then, Scholastic put the book on their website, and they added 1 word to the summary, changing one of the sentences to, quote, you, the reader, are security guard Ralph. Just this description gives us a lot to work with. First of all, for the first time in the 10 years of this franchise, we have a name for the phone guy, Ralph. Well, at least the presumed phone guy. Again, the book isn't out, so we cannot confirm anything, but if we're playing the week before FNAF 1 and we're playing as a security guard, in FNAF 1, the phone calls you listen to are voicemails left by the previous night guard. So theoretically, we're playing as phone guy, unless it turns out that FNAF 1 we're listening to some kind of tape recording, similar to what Mike does in the movie. After all, nowhere in the description for this book does it explicitly state that we're going to leave voicemails for the next night guard. It just says we're we're a night guard. It also seems like we'll be trying to survive 5 nights, or is it 6, at Freddy's. Now, we are pretty certain that canonically, Phone Guy survives until night 5, when he's presumably killed by Golden Freddy, at least judging by the jump scare noise that plays over the phone. But we've never really been fully sure. After all, another one of the animatronics could have killed him and then Golden Freddy jump scared afterwards. Or anything else could have happened. We only have an audio recording. So when I see a book like this is the perfect opportunity to expand the information we have about FNAF 1 for the timeline. And I say that because I think this is the first book series that is unambiguously stated to be a part of the game's continuity. For those of you who don't know, there's a massive debate in the FNAF fandom on whether the books are actually taking place within the universe of the games or not. And it's been going on ever since there's been books in this franchise. Because for the Silver Eyes, Scott made it pretty clear that these books don't take place within the game's timeline, but some characters and events and locations overlap. However, he wasn't as clear with Fazbear Frights or Tales from the Pizzaplex. Fazbear Frights, he said that some stories will be directly connected and some not, and he hasn't said anything about Tales from the Pizzaplex, although the back of the book description says it's set in the FNAF universe, but that's still not technically confirmation because, like, you need to mention a timeline. It's a whole debate. Meanwhile, the very first book in this series in the description says, quote, "This interactive novel set before the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game." I admit, it feels pretty unambiguous. And I think further evidence to prove that these books are within the game's continuity is the fact that their plot lines are ambiguous. There are 25 plus endings, not to mention 2 difficulty settings for both The Week Before and Return to the Pit. And there's multiple endings for VIP as well. First of all, I have no idea how difficulty modes work in a choose your own adventure novel. I have no idea how that works. But isn't it so Scott Cawthon to, for the first time in the history of this franchise, unambiguously publish a series of books and say, hey guys, these books are 100% within the game's timeline continuity. And then said books have 25 endings and only one of the endings is the correct one? It's so Scott Cawthon. But that being said, a book with multiple endings isn't necessarily a bad thing for trying to solve the lore. After all, I'm looking at these books the same way I look at Security Breach. Sure, there are multiple endings to the game, and only one of those endings actually happened. But theoretically, any of those endings could have happened, meaning whatever we see in those other endings does exist within this timeline. It just didn't actually happen. For example, if we're reading The Week Before and one of the endings has the phone guy die on night 4 in the same way we hear in game, then that makes a lot, or night 4 or night 5? Oh, brain fart. Okay, I had to double check because I got mixed up. Night 4, phone guy dies. So, presumably. So if there's an ending in the books where Phone Guy dies in night 4, we can probably assume that is the correct ending, the actual ending that happens in the book. However, if one of the other endings has us surviving till night 6 and then going into an office and finding some documents about the building, those documents exist. Just because Phone Guy didn't find them doesn't mean they're not there, which means we're learning even more about FNAF 1 in these other endings. So what information could we glean from this book? Well, like I said, it's not out yet, but I think there is a lot of potential for information that we might find out. I mean, first of all, we might learn more about who Phone Guy is. Sure, we have a name in the description, Ralph, but we still have no idea who he is, why he's working here. A lot of people have the theory that Phone Guy has been working with Fazbear for upwards of 20 to 30 years. After all, the same voice is heard in the FNAF 2 phone calls, and even the tapes recorded that are recovered in FNAF 3. Now, granted, these all sound the same because they're all Scott Cawthon, because he was the only voice actor for those games, but now we might find out if that was intentional or not. We also might find out more about the FNAF 1 Freddy's location in general, or whether it takes place before or after Follow Me. We might even get a solid placement in the timeline for FNAF 1. After all, a lot of people believe that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, and that it's at an open Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But there's a very possible chance that the game actually takes place much later, and it's closer to the movie's continuity where Mike is actually watching over a closed Freddy Fazbear's years after it was ever open. All of this and more potential information could be in this book, which is why I'm so excited for these books. And like I said, this is the book with the least amount of speculation possible for it right now. All we really know is it's The Week Before FNAF 1. So then what about the other full-length book announced for this series? Return to the Pit is a very interesting book. First of all, let me give you the summary we have. Quote, dive into an interactive retelling of one of the most popular FNAF stories and the basis for an all-new video game, Into the Pit. You, the reader, are Oswald, and after using the ball pit at Jeff's Pizza to travel back in time to 1985, you've brought a sadistic animatronic back into the present. Can you escape? Or will it be game over for you and your friends? So, like, this is just Into the Pit again, right? Well, it's an adaptation. Like we've mentioned several times on this channel, if this is the basis for the game that's coming out, the game of Into the Pit has already shown us that it's changed multiple things from the original story. But it seems like it's mainly changing things to make it into a better game. After all, the original Into the Pit story is kind of just Oswald hanging out with friends, and then for 2 days he avoids an animatronic rabbit, and then it's over. And that's not really a great game. So it seems like they're changing things to the story to add more game opportunities to make it more fun to play. And likely the same thing is happening with this story. Not to mention length. I mean, the original Into the Pit story is 37 pages. Meanwhile, this one is 256. And yes, I know Into the Pit is 37 pages. I just read all of it for the secret third channel that you have to find. Like, sure, there's going to be multiple versions of the same events happening with slight things change, which adds length, but this is a ridiculous amount of length to add, so there's gotta be more things happening. So what exactly do we think is going to be changed? Well, for one, I think Oswald might be under threat for a longer time. If we went by just the timing of the story for the original Into the Pit, Oswald is perfectly safe for most of it. The timeline for the events of the game, if it was just the book, would be something along the lines of Oswald just having a great time for night 1, then him noticing a weird rabbit on night 2, and then him noticing a weird rabbit again on night 3, and then night 4, everything happens. Like, that's a lot of games squeezed into the last 2 nights. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Not to mention that that's like the end of the story that whole week. For the majority of the story, it's just Oswald having a miserable life and then hanging out in the past and having a blast. Like, that's the majority of the story. So if this is a rewrite to make it a better game, what I assume is going to happen is that those last 2 days are going to be spread out throughout the majority of the story, or at least the latter half. And then maybe Spring Bonnie and the other animatronics are going to be more of an active threat in the earlier half of the story. That's my guess anyway. But regardless of what is going to happen in the story, the most interesting debate around this book is actually kind of a meta debate. If we are to assume that the week before and VIP are within the game's continuity and everything says that they should be, then it would only make sense for Return to the Pit to be as well. After all, it is the basis for Into the Pit, the game, a game coming out which will also presumably be within the game's timeline. So if Return to the Pit, and by extension the game that's based off of it, are in the game's timeline, does that mean the original Into the Pit story is as well, along with the rest of the Fazbear Fright stories connected to it, which is most of them? I don't blame anyone for saying yes. Personally, I just want to wait until the game and book are fully out to make a final judgment call. Big boy. And here's my reasoning. If the original Into the Pit story is being confirmed to be within the game's timeline, why are they remaking it twice? Like, if it was just the game Into the Pit, you could argue, oh, well, they just wanted to fully prove that it is by making it a game. Sure, but then why are they making a new book based on the old book? They're rewriting the story, so why would they rewrite the story if the original story is what's actually within the game's timeline? So my guess as to what's actually going on here is that Into the Pit is in the game's continuity, but they are rewriting it, adjusting it, and tweaking it to make it better and more smoothly fit into the game's continuity, which, who knows, they might do for the rest of the Fazbear Fright stories. I'm not sure. I just want to wait until the game and the book come out so we can see what these differences are and see if they're meaningful enough to make a distinction. I don't know, but I will say, all of this is very, very solid evidence for Into the Pit and the rest of the Fazbear Frights to be within the game's continuity. I just want to know what gets left on the cutting room floor. But we have one more book to talk about, a book that up until like last week we had no information on, but then a listing was posted on Edelweiss? Edelweiss? A website I've never heard of before, but apparently it sells books, so it added a summary for VIP. Now, this is the free ebook we're getting on August 3rd as part of FNAF's anniversary week, and all we knew until now was its title, but now we have this summary. Quote, get ready for an all-new Five Nights at Freddy's experience. You, the reader, are Devin, and you've won VIP passes to the hottest place in town, Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. These all-you-can-eat, all-expenses-paid tickets are guided by digital companion Very Informative Pig, and are every kid's dream. But does your VIP host have something more sinister in mind? So I do want to point out, I was half right. When I made my original video talking about the announcement, I guessed that this book would be about Gregory or Cassie's dad, both of them being very important people in Security Breach. And I was right that it's in Security Breach, but I was wrong because it's an original character, something I did not guess. I didn't think that was possible, mainly because The Week Before and Return to the Pit feature characters that already exist in-game. So Devin, as far as we're aware, is a new character being added here. Now, maybe we just missed a kid named Devin in Security Breach, totally possible, and the name Devin has popped up before in some of the books, but it seems like this is a new character. Granted, if I had to guess, we probably did see him once in Security Breach as one of the silhouettes of missing kids at the end of the bad ending. Call it a hunch. I have a feeling Devin might die. But things that stick out from this description immediately is that it has to be before Ruin, right? I mean, we're playing at a Mega Pizzaplex, so it's almost guaranteed the Mega Pizzaplex we're playing at is Security Breach, which is then ruined by the time of Ruin. But if that's the case, do we play before or after Security Breach? It's not necessary that we're playing beforehand. It will just change what endings are deconfirmed. After all, if we're playing post-Security Breach in a functioning Pizzaplex, that deconfirms the burn trap and the fire escape ending, because both of those endings destroy the Pizzaplex. Not to mention, if we're playing after Security Breach and Freddy is playing on stage, that further deconfirms the Van ending and both Vanny endings, because in all of those, Freddy is either stolen or dismantled. Now, that's cool and all, but personally, I think it makes the most sense for this book to take place before Security Breach. One, it just fits easier on the timeline, and two, that's where we have the most missing information. After all, most fans, I think, can connect the through line from Security Breach to Ruin. A lot of FNAF fans, especially those that haven't read any of the books, really don't know how we go from Help Wanted to Security Breach. And this would be a perfect opportunity to expand on that. Maybe we'll learn what Gregory and Vanessa were doing before Security Breach and how Gregory ended up inside Freddy. Or if you've been reading all the books, what GGY was doing inside of Freddy. Because in the books, it's revealed that Gregory was working with Glitchtrap before Security Breach, and we might see some of that in this book. We might even see what Vanny was doing to get rid of the employees, or more information on the all-staff meeting. And finally, the man of the hour, VIP, or Very Important Pig. We have one, counted one, animatronic pig in this entire series. Now, we do have Bubba in FNAF World, but that's in FNAF World, and we've never seen a physical Bubba. We have Pig Patch, one of the mediocre melodies. And up until recently, he was a pretty obscure character, only really showing up in FNAF 6 and Ultimate Custom Night. Forget all of the Pig Patch stuff. I just finished recording. I ended the recording at 2:30. And then at 2:43, we got to look at the cover. Here it is. This is the cover for the book. It ain't Pig Patch, so it's a new character. I love him. He looks like a fat, greedy capitalist pig, which is really funny. It's not Pig Patch though, so forget that whole thing. The rest of it still stands. God damn it. You know, you don't get the lights, you don't get the green screen, it's too hot. But we'll find out together on stream. That's right, the last week of July, I'm on vacation, so there will be no streams. But I come back the 2nd or maybe the 3rd. So as soon as I can after vacation, we will be live on this channel and on Twitch, reading through VIP together and trying to beat it. It's a free ebook, so I assume I can just read it out entirely in stream. So keep your eyes up for that, and if you want a reminder for it, you should probably subscribe to the channel, or follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/RightHostYT. Either way, it'll be on both. I usually stream on both. But in the meantime, if you want to know more about the other announcements in this lineup, I made a whole video covering the announcement about a couple weeks ago right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #BarBADroid. Huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.